Elon Musk puts out a tweet over the weekend, basically summarizing Biden's immigration plan. It says, import as many illegal immigrants as you can, grant them amnesty, and you've basically secured the next generation of votes, a one-party system, rule for life. And my goodness, Robert, the stuck pigs were squealing all over the internet. This is a vile racist conspiracy theory. How dare he? The people screaming and crying really confirmed how accurate and on point it was. And so it leads to some questions. I put out my analysis, which was piecing together some articles from the past, videos from the present, and seeing what the hell's going on. We had talked about it a while ago. I think we talked about it a few times, where the question is, can the president grant amnesty to illegal immigrants? Back in Obama's day, at one point, they said, no, the president can't grant amnesty. And then 2 years later, there's another fact check that basically says, yes, they can. Can they, Robert? What would be the consequences of granting amnesty? Can he grant amnesty for all illegal immigrants, known and unknown, which would be in the order of like 40 million? Would that grant them citizenship? And what impact would that have on their ability to vote in federal elections?
He can't grant them citizenship. That's exclusively within the province of Congress to legally authorize in the first place. What he can do is he can grant mass amnesty. He could grant a pardon. So he could say, I hereby pardon everybody who may have entered the country illegally between X time period and X time period, and they are hereby given a full unconditional pardon. The most recent illustration of this is not the Reagan amnesty, because that was a congressionally passed amnesty. It is rather the Jimmy Carter amnesty that he signed almost as soon as he took office for the people who dodged the draft from during the Vietnam War draft in particular, because it applied, I think, from 63 to 75, something like that. And it says anybody who's in this category is hereby pardoned, with only two caveats. So that power has been exercised before. George Washington exercised it at the beginning of our country to pardon a bunch of people connected to the whiskey tax rebellion due to Alexander Hamilton's idiotic whiskey tax. They should have hung him for that, but that's another story. So yeah, he can. He illegally, constitutionally does have that power. He doesn't have the power to grant him citizenship, doesn't have the power to give him the right to vote, doesn't have the power to do any of that. DACA was never constitutional, what Obama did, but he can grant mass amnesty. That would be to where you couldn't criminally prosecute them. And whether or not you could deport them would be an open question, because it's whether deportation is a civil or a criminal remedy, depending on the circumstance. So that power is legit, and that risk is real.
And the risk of amnesty for all illegals, and not just the 11 million that they were talking about.
Yeah, he could do it to any category he wanted to. That he has the power to do, and then that gets into the state law questions, right? That's where there's state laws that have been violated, but the Supreme Court has said the states can't enforce those laws if it impacts federal immigration. So if they could enforce those laws, then they could separately, independently prosecute. But right now they can't. I was on Turkish television this week, the station funded by, it's called Erdogan's station, but the debating about whether it was an invasion or not, that created its own constitutional remedies that has yet to be fully litigated in the courts, and is separate from the Arizona case. And aside from the fact that the ratio is tenfold higher, we've gone from 300,000 illegal entries to over 3 million. And this is unprecedented in American history in the last century. But then you have what Brett Weinstein found that he reported to Tucker Carlson, which is when he went down to the gap there, that big jungle region between Panama and Colombia that over 500,000 people have crossed in just the last year, went there with Michael Young and others. He found a Chinese camp that appeared to be run by the Chinese government, that they were using the economic migrants as cover for infiltration of soldier age Chinese citizens. And there's a video circulating that appears to be connected to the Chinese government, showing people how they're going to do it. So this might be if China thinks Biden is crazy and is going to escalate, they might be planting sleeper cells right here in the United States, using this. And then you have the broader issue that the economic migrants are coming in being illegally described as political asylum candidates when they're not, but it's being funded by the U.S. government. The U.S. government is funding various non-governmental organizations, many of which have ties to Soros and other globalist type people like that, who are and then the United Nations is funding this. They're organizing this. This is not random people doing it. It's the drug cartels in bed with the United Nations and the U.S. government NGOs facilitating and enabling this. And it's now even to the point where the Chinese government and maybe other governments, I mean, there's now arms dealers that have come across, people that are unknown terror lists that have come across. I mean, this is a complete disaster to such a degree that people like Elon Musk is saying it, that Robert Kennedy is saying it, that Brett Weinstein is saying it.
This is what blows my mind, is how could this not be facilitating an invasion? How could it not be an impeachable offense? I mean, and now that we know, I guess this might come back to bite them in the ass if the impeachable offense doesn't have to be a crime. Could this not be an impeachable offense? And the idea of being able to exercise
it's mass facilitation of a crime because he's aiding and abetting the illegal entry into the United States.
But he can
and
make
an invasion. He's also aiding and abetting an invasion, which is a violation of his constitutional duties and obligations. But that is a high crime and misdemeanor in my view.
But he could ratify all of it with the blanket amnesty.
But that act can also be impeachable. That refusing to enforce the criminal laws in that manner and granting pardons can itself be impeachable. That's why you can't pardon yourself from impeachment. So so I think that they should have already impeached him. It's ridiculous that it's got to this point. Instead, they want to use it as cover to send more money to Ukraine, which is just nuts. Even though the more published reports this week of what we said from day one and what the Duran and other people have said from day one, that, the CIA had to go over there to tell Zelensky, please stop stealing everything. Can you steal just a little bit less? Can you show some discretion? That, they're just stealing in mass and we're going to send them more under the guise that we're going to we'll get around to finally enforcing those immigration rules. How about defund the NGOs and the United Nations until they stop funding these big caravans of illegal immigration? How about start there for one? But they should have impeached Mayorkas already, and they should have impeached Biden already. But it's a bunch of lazy, half-wit, nitwit, midwits in the Congress on the Republican side of the aisle, many of whom are all for this illegal immigration. They don't want to admit that. They don't want to tell anybody that, but their corporate pals love it. You dig in deep, you're going to find Tyson Foods. You're going to find big companies that profit from this illegal immigration.
Well, who did I played a clip of? In my analysis of the Elon Musk, there was some guy on CNN saying, we come across these migrants every day. They work in the car washes. They clean up, pick up garbage. And I'm like, why is it that every Democrat views immigrants as the people to do your shitty jobs? As if that's not a modern day form of slavery, mutatis mutandis. Like, how are they not ashamed of saying it? You had not Lee Osborne. What's her name? One of the Osborne woman on The View. But Donald Trump, who's going to clean your toilets? Like, they're not even ashamed to say it. They just say it out loud. This is our solution to crappy jobs. Let in economic migrants, and so we can exploit them. But I want to share this, Robert. If you haven't seen this, it's Hawley and Mayorkas pulling
performance is despicable. And I think the fact that you are not willing to provide answers to this committee is absolutely atrocious.
Listen to this. This is Mayorkas.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Look at him. He's so dignified.
If you'd like to have a minute to respond, you will. I would, and I'm not sure I'll limit it to 60 seconds.
Well, cut his mic. Then.
Number one, what I found despicable is the implication that this language, tremendously odious, actually it could be emblematic of the sentiments of the 260,000 men and women of the Department of Homeland Security. Number one. Number two, Senator Hawley takes a adversarial approach to me in this question.
Robert, let me just pause it here. He's Homeland Security Secretary. What's his position in life?
We shouldn't even have a Homeland Security Department. I mean, the fact, I mean, that they created it after 9/11, by the way. Fatherland Securitas. It's like, okay, let's go back to the Nazis for examples of governmental organization. That's always worked out well. But he is responsible for immigration enforcement in the United States.
Okay, well, interesting comparison, Robert. Wait until you see where Mayorkas goes. If any of you didn't know that he was Jewish, you're going to find out now.
And perhaps he doesn't know my own background. Perhaps he does not know that I am the child of a Holocaust survivor.
What does that have to do with anything?
Perhaps he does not know that my mother lost almost all her family at the hands of the Nazis.
What does that have to do with anything?
I mean, if anything, that says he has a motivation to favor open migration, right? I mean, if there had been open migration, maybe the people could have escaped the Holocaust. I mean, it doesn't help his argument that he's trying to really restrict open migration. Clearly, he's not, and he hasn't done it the whole time. Now, I don't pin it on him because it's the Biden administration policy. Biden said it was going to be his policy. And so Mayorkas should be impeached, but Biden should be the target of all this.
I'll finish this.
And so I find his adversarial tone to be entirely misplaced.
Okay.
I find it to be disrespectful of me and my heritage.
Oh, okay. It's anti-Semitic.
And I do not expect an apology, but I did want to say what I just articulated.
Well, tough
Thank you.
effing S, Mayorkas. Do your job. Do your freaking job. And it's true, Robert. He's but the fall guy, the messenger for Biden. But people don't think Biden's in charge either. They think that Obama's still pulling the strings behind Obama, which might make a little more sense in terms of going back and reassessing the argument as to national loyalty. Things might make more sense in reverse. Okay, so he can do it. He can destroy. Hypothetically, they grant amnesty. That would prevent deportation, potentially. Criminal deportation based on the act of having entered unlawfully.
But it doesn't create citizenship, doesn't create or vest voting rights. There's a separate issue there because, in Arizona, you have the Secretary of Secretary of State, if I recall correctly, that's issuing, guidance about allowing illegals to vote in the federal elections on the grounds that the Biden administration is interpreting federal law to prohibit you from confirming someone's citizenship as a condition of federal voting, or it's a Voting Rights Act violation. That's how insane things are. So it's just we're facing the political weaponization of everything and an attack at every level. And it's going to be, up to the people, up to legislators, up to the conscientious courts to correct it. And we'll find out whether that's going to happen.